Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is a continuation of the previous video with the drive shaft, where I tried to replace the drive shaft with a new one to try and get rid of this whining noise that is coming from underneath, possibly the gearbox. So as you've seen in the previous video, I wasn't able to fix it by replacing the drive shaft. So the last thing we have to do is basically remove the whole front of this van and take the engine out with the gearbox out. You could just remove the gearbox if you just want to refurbish the gearbox, if you want to work just on that side of things. In my case, I'm going to be doing a bit of maintenance on this engine. So as I like to say, let's not waste any time and let's get started. I want to show you just to be extra careful here when you remove these pins, you've got a small pin which is inserted into another pin, and you're gonna need probably 3 different thicknesses. I don't have a caliper now to check the diameter of these, but you can just be careful and take care. Now once you've taken this one here, you want to beat out the second one, and the second one is one of these expanding ones, so hopefully you can see it okay on the camera here. I'll put this in the bag. I'm going to remove this switch now. I believe this is for the reverse light, and it is 24 millimeters. So in order for me to split the gearbox, I'm going to need to access all these E12 bolts. So in the next step, we're gonna remove the casing here. So as you can see, previously we've removed all the bolts, and we've removed this lever here. My back is a little bit sore, so I don't want to be lifting too much weight, but what I'm going to do is I'm gonna disassemble the transmission, and then when we remove the gears, I'm gonna transport everything to my workbench, and this way I can show you in a little bit better conditions with lighting and everything. I can hopefully record it a bit better, so I can show you everything inside in good detail. So let's give it a shake, and really the main thing you want to take out is this shaft here, and that's the gearbox open. In order to dismantle the gearbox and to remove all these shafts, bearings, you want to remove this metal plate here first. So you want to move it to the left, lift the shaft up, remove it from this holding pin here. In the next step, you want to lift this shaft up and pop this sprocket completely out, and this will allow you to remove this. This should hopefully slide out the easiest of all 3. This is the input shaft. Uh-oh, this bearing has totally failed. So there you have it. I want to show you the magnet and the condition of it. So the magnet is right here. That's all metal. going to use the bigger one of the two. Seems to fit a bit better. I probably should have tried that one first. You've got circlips on some of these shafts, so we're going to have to remove this first. And then take the bearing out. I want to show you my way of removing bearing races from a gearbox. In this case we got a Renault Trafic, Vauxhall Vivaro, Nissan Primastar. This is going to be exact same gearbox. Normally they're PK or PF6, some of them are 5-speed, PK5. So anyway, in this case we've got a 6-speed gearbox. We've got several bearing races to remove, and I'm going to show you my way of removing these. Obviously you're going to need to use a welder. I've got a MIG welder, and unfortunately if you do not have a MIG welder, you're going to have to find a different way to deal with these. When you use a MIG welder, it's probably the easiest way, less time consuming, and yeah, it's a bit more efficient that way. So I've clamped the earth on the obviously body of the gearbox. So there you go, we managed to remove one of them. And I'm gonna show you exactly how we did this. I'm gonna remove this plastic cap here. Everything will be thoroughly washed and cleaned, so don't worry about a little bit of dirt that you're seeing here from the welding process. So the trick is to start welding on one side and then the other side, and then cool it down very quickly, and that normally should shrink the metal, and then you can pull it out. In the next step, we're going to remove this metal plate on the diff bush or the diff seal, and actually this is the right diameter for this is the input shaft seal. We're just going to knock it off and use the biggest one for this seal. I'm gonna spray a little bit of brake cleaner now and rinse these cases. Alright guys, so just before we proceed with installation of the bearing races and the bearings, and before we put the gearbox together, I wanted to share some, I think, very important information, very crucial information here. If you get this wrong, you'll probably end up buying the wrong parts and you're probably going to waste a lot of time. And it is a time-consuming process, because for you to get the right bearing sizes, you have to not just take the gearbox apart. Obviously you have to drop the gearbox first, take it apart, remove all the shafts, and you are not going to be able to get the EC numbers from the bearing races until you pull the actual bearing races off the shafts and off the gearbox casings. So I'm going to put some pictures on the screen to show you what I'm talking about. Now this is the bottom of the bearing, and now you got the bearing race which sits on top. It's like a cone shape, sits on top, and you can't see the back of them because obviously the way they're installed. But each one of these bearings has an EC number, and these EC numbers are very important. It's the only way you can order the correct parts. From my research and from the shop that sold me the bearings, what they told me is over the years of the manufacturing of the PF6 and the PK6 gearboxes, they installed different types of bearings and different sizes. Now the sizes of the bearings, now you're talking, for example, this here, which is EC41446, you've got two different sizes, and the difference is in the width. So you've got 61.7 and 62, so you're talking 0.03 millimeters difference from one bearing race to the other. So basically what I had to do, I had to take everything apart, I had to pull these parts out, and then I measured the sizes. I'm lucky to have a set of actually I've got a full set of micrometers, so I got the right size. After I pull the parts out, I send them to the shop. They're able to include the correct bearings in the kit. Now I wanted to mention the name of the company that sold me the bearings. I'm making absolutely no money on this. I did say to them that I was very happy with their service. They're very professional. They explained everything in detail, and I got 4 quotes from 4 different shops. They were the quickest to respond, and they were the most professional, and they tried to, whatever questions I had, they answered them in perfect detail. And again, this is I'm not a gearbox rebuilding shop, so my knowledge is also limited when it comes to these things, so I'm learning as I go along. But anyway, I've got the kit here. The kit cost £228, so they were £2 cheaper than anywhere else. This includes delivery, and so basically what you've got in the kit, you've got 6 bearings on the shaft and the gears, you've got 2 on the diff, you've got 2 oil seals, one on the input shaft, one on diff, and then you've got 2 oil deflectors. Now I'm going to show you all these from a close-up, and the bearings that come in this kit, these are the genuine original bearings that were in the gearbox from day one. The company that makes these bearings is a French company called S&R, and that's exactly what we've got here. We've got S&R bearings, and yeah, when I bring you closer here to show you the contents of this box, we're going to talk a little bit more about the EC numbers and all the details. So let me bring you closer and show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've just removed my address and name from here. I want to keep this private, but this is just showing you the kit. Again, ignore, this is probably not relevant because I purchased it and I had to tell them all the sizes and everything. So literally 228.26 pounds. So this is what it cost me for the kit. Now, what's in the kit? You've got EC41457, 2 of them. You've got 2 of these 41446. Remember, this is the one that was the trickiest one to get. I had to take them out and measure them. So mine were 61.7, the width of the base of the bearing race. And we've got 2, 4, 1, 4, 4, 4. Not really sure if this camera is zooming on the numbers, but I'm going to put these in the description as well. Again, this is in my case. You may have a different gearbox with different bearings. You've got a seal for the diff, you've got one for the input shaft on the gearbox, you've got an oil deflector, another oil deflector with a little spike here, and then you've got the 2 bigger bearings. This is obviously, these are for the diff. So I'm going to start with the installation of the bearings in the actual cases of the gearbox. So we're going to install the bearing races first, then we're going to press with a hydraulic press. We're going to press the actual bearings on the shafts, on the gear shafts, and hopefully everything will work together. We're going to do a dry fit. We're going to try and get the gears all going, and after this we're going to put silicone on the case, close it, seal it, and fill it up with oil. So I don't want to go into the oil grades yet. This is a very long discussion, and also the correct oil level for these PK6 gearboxes. So yeah, we'll leave that for another time. As I like to say, let's not waste any time and let's get started. Just before we start with the installation of the bearing races, very important thing is to have this gearbox absolutely squeaky clean, and just make sure there's no metal, no silicone, no dirt and dust whatsoever. So it has to be super clean. I'm going to use an airline to just give it a final clean just once again, and then we're going to install the shims, and then we're going to start by installing the bearing races. Now I've got a bearing race installation tool which I want to share. This is a very cheap tool, and I bought this on eBay for £18. We're going to use some of these medium-sized bushings or drivers, and this is made of aluminium. You're going to be installing bearings which are made of hardened steel, so there's absolutely no way you will cause any damage when you use one of these soft metal tools. And this is probably the first one we're going to require. Some people like to put some very light oil. I like to install these bearings dry. If I run into any difficulty, then I'll consider using something else, but I'd like to install them nice and dry. So as I said, you've got 3 shims. This is not something you can mix up. The other 2 smaller ones are the same, and these are EC41444. So you've got one here and one there, and you've got 41446, which is going to be the bigger one of the 3. So let's start with the bottom one here, and what I like to do is just give them a slight push. Now if you want to try and start them, if you don't have one of these drivers, you're probably going to be able to use the old bearing races in case you want to beat on them and not beat on these new ones here. You can also use a copper hammer, hard plastic mallet, the shaft of a mallet, just whatever's handy. What I'm going to attempt to use first is just a standard hammer with a driver, and just let me show you how this fits. So it's cone shaped, and also the widest part here sits on the face of the bearing race. So let's make a start. Try and have it nice and centered, and I've also supported my gearbox casing with some wooden blocks, so make sure you make the most and make yourself nice and comfortable, because you don't want this to go wrong. It's going in nice and slowly. I'm taking my time. It's nice and flush now. So I'm gonna keep driving it until it hits the shim. And if you can spin the shim, then it means it's not fully seated. So it's very important for this to be absolutely properly seated to the very bottom. Otherwise, even maybe a couple of microns, it can put extra load on the bearings, and you're gonna ruin the gearbox again. You can also go by noise. Depending on the noise it makes when you're hitting it, you will know if you've actually hit the bottom. So far everything looks perfect. Okay, let's install the second 41444. It's gonna go in here. This should be a little bit easier to install because it's a bit higher, so I can beat on the tool a bit more comfortably. I'm gonna support the bottom of the gearbox just underneath this bearing with some wood, and I want it to sit right on top of the wood because I don't want it to be in the air, and then I don't want to crack the casing. So it's very important to use your common sense and not cause any damage here. Obviously at this point, just before I moved it, I was tapping quite lightly, but now the race is going further down. There's a bit more friction and I'm having to use a bit more force. I don't know if you can hear this, but as soon as I hit the bottom, the noise changed, so I know I'm completely flush with the shim here. So that's just perfect. One more to go on the bottom, and then obviously the diff. Now I'm gonna have to change this to a different attachment. So this one was 50mm. If you had maybe 51 or 52, it would be even better. And this is 59mm. I'm going to use a heavy piece of aluminium. I'm going to sit it on top of the race. I'm going to beat it because it's not properly seated. So I'm going to try and straighten it this way. I'm going to spray a little bit of fogging oil. This is properly seated. Again, you can hear the noise. It's more like metal to metal noise. That's it. Proper job. 3 bearing races in place. I don't have a massive bush installation tool, so I'm probably gonna have to start it with the copper hammer. And then use the base of the old bearing. I'm going to use the old bearing race for a bit of extra height here. Okay, I'm going to give this a good clean, and then we're going to proceed with the installation of the rest of the bearing races on the other side of the gearbox. Okay, let's continue with the other side. So we've got 3 oil deflectors, that's what these 3 pieces are. There's a metal one here for the diff. This one goes in here, and this one goes in here. And by the way, you can't install these the wrong way because there is a certain way they fit. So you can just push this down. So this sits nice and perfect here as well. The next one is the metal one. And you can just push this one with your fingers. Now, it's time to install the bearing races. I'm going to start with the smallest one of the 3, which is going to be right here. Now, what I will do is I'm going to spray just a little bit of, this is fogging oil. So I'm going to spray it and then wipe it. I'm going to wipe the excess oil which is on the base. That's perfect, and it's perfectly in place. Now, I forgot to tell you that the bearing races are 4-1, 4-5-7 in this place here and this place here, and this one here is a 4-1, 4-4-6. Now we're gonna continue with the installation of the bearings on the gears, on the gear shafts. We've got 4-1, 4-4-6 on the bottom and 4-1, 4-5-7 on the top here. So I've prepared and I've numbered these. These are my own reference numbers. You can just create your own. But the most important thing is obviously to match the original bearing numbers with the new ones. Now, we're going to use a hydraulic press, and what I'm going to do is, obviously you need to make sure that the surfaces are perfectly clean. You don't want to put any pressure on these plastic rings here, so what I'm going to use is the original bearing in this orientation, and then I'm going to press on the top of the shaft here. So when I sit my first bearing on the bottom, then I'm going to still have this in place, and then install the second bearing on the top of the shaft with the help of this bearing body as well. That's the bearing seated properly. Hopefully I'm not in the way, so you can see this from a good camera angle. You want to remove the old one. And if this is properly seated, we should be able to install our circlip. So let's move this to the bench and do that next. And this clicked in place. EC41457. This is going to be a little bit harder to start. This is 41446. You want to install it. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. Just double check all the surfaces. Install it in place. Use the old one. Upside down. Now let's center it properly here. I'm gonna use one more of these. Some extensions. And this one is 41444. We got the last shaft here, and this one is 41444. We're gonna install the circlip now. There's no way you can mistake this bearing, but just if you want to know the number, it's EC12694. So we're going to use the old one and an extra block. Let's go ahead and install the seals. Let's go ahead and install this seal in place. I'm gonna apply some assembly lube on all the bearings and all the bearing races. Don't forget to place the magnet. I want to mention something very important before we proceed with the closing of the gearbox. You've got all these shafts for the gears that move up and down, so you want to check every single one of them that it moves in the right place and it locks and it unlocks. So this is obviously not going to be ideal because all these shafts are moving and it's not centered by the other side of the casing. But basically if you move this, that's obviously your neutral. You're going to have third and fourth. You're going to have all the other gears. You want to make sure that this shaft moves up and down, and then this one moves up and down, which obviously moves this one up and down and this one up and down. So everything is locked in place. This is tightened. I didn't put any thread locker on it, but I made sure that the holes are clean with brake cleaner, and then I put plenty of torque on these bolts. I went by hand. I didn't use a specific torque sequence with a torque wrench or anything. I just good and tight, and I think we're okay here, all the gears. So I'm going to do one dry fit. I'm going to put the casing on the top. I'm going to obviously lubricate the other bearing races. These bearings are lubricated with Lucas assembly oil. So yeah, I think we're going to do one dry fit. We're going to take the casing off. We're going to clean the surfaces here and apply fresh silicone. Okay, so you want to install it, you want to have it on the right hand side. When you slide down, when you're on the shaft, go down a couple of millimeters and then you can feel it hitting. So this is going to insert in the mechanism that lifts the gears up and down and moves them. So you want to be able to rotate this. So this is in neutral. This is in neutral position now. This is third and fourth gear. I'm going to open the gearbox now. I only put 4 bolts just to make sure that everything moves. So our gearbox is fully operational. This was the dry fit. I'm going to take these off. We're going to apply silicone, and then we're going to install all the bolts and tighten them to spec. Before we apply the silicone, I'm going to dampen this cloth really well with brake cleaner. I don't want to spray brake cleaner on the surfaces because I've already lubricated some of the bearings and the bearing races. So really what I want to do is give it a good clean like that. Now this casing is very clean, even though it's leaving a little bit of dirty residue. I have cleaned it really well. You've seen it in the video. I gave it a good wash as well, even with the pressure washer. And then after that I have cleaned it with brake cleaner. So this surface should be good for silicone. I'm going to apply it just a thin bead around the edge. I'm going to just flatten it with my finger, and I'm going to do the same on this side as well. Now let's apply 42 Newton meters of torque. I'm going to install the reverse light switch, and before I install it I'm going to apply some Renzoplast. This is not silicone, this is special sealant that doesn't harden and doesn't it's not like a thread locker, so you just apply it on the threads. It will just stop the oil going through. This is a 27mm socket. This is what we've got in the kit, and by the way, just for your reference, I like to put these in the description in case some of you may want to order them yourself. ADR 163602. So this kit, it will have everything in it so you can fit it in place. That's obviously the release bearing, which we're going to install here. And I'm not going to use this bit, this is going to be spare. And this is what we're going to be using in this application. I'm going to spray a little bit of lubricant on these O-rings so I don't tear them. Let's insert the pin. So that's how easy it is to install a release bearing on a PK6 gearbox, Vauxhall Vivaro, Nissan Primastar and Renault Trafic. The correct torque spec for these bolts is 60 Newton meters. I'm going to install the clutch now. I've already installed the release bearing on the gearbox. This is a blueprint clutch that I'm going to be using. I'm going to put the part number in the description as usual. This is ADN 130240. Clutch. and the pressure plate. Don't forget to rinse the pressure plate because it's probably oily, so use some brake cleaner. You want to fit your clutch the correct way. As you can see, it says gearbox side here, so you can't really get this wrong, to be honest. The correct torque for the bolts on the pressure plate is 20 Newton meters. So let's go ahead and tighten these in crisscross pattern. I'm gonna add some oil to the gearbox at this point. Now I'm not filling it completely. I'm only gonna put 2 liters, and then we're gonna use the dipstick and add from the third bottle. So I would say it will be somewhere between 2.35 and 2.65 liters, but we'll confirm that for the PK6 1.9 DCI engine. So let's go ahead and open this filler. And basically you don't want to fill this until it starts leaking. That's wrong, you're gonna ruin the gearbox. I've never seen a bottle like that before. You can see this is definitely original. So it has a little tap here, and that's excellent idea. Very clever design. Okay, I don't want to spill this through the diff side and drive shaft side, so I think I'm gonna just do 1 liter now, and then fill up the rest later on. I've previously added 1 liter to the transmission before I put the engine in place. So now I can comfortably add a little bit more. So I'm hoping this will take maybe nearly another liter before I have to put the drive shafts. So let's pour it in, and if it starts leaking through the casing there, through the drive shaft, we're gonna stop adding the oil. So that's 2 liters without any leaks whatsoever, and that's 2 liters from the gearbox being completely dry and rebuilt. So I've added 2 liters, nearly 2 liters, not fully 2 liters, and it started leaking. So we're gonna have to put the drive shaft in place. I'm hoping you guys can see this very well. Now this is the filler cap, and as previously showed you, I've added some oil previously, and now the total oil I've added so far in the gearbox was 2.3 liters. And I want to show you, this is the moment where if you have any doubt on the correct amount of oil in this PK6 gearbox, this is basically what removes any doubt. So this is a original genuine dipstick that I purchased from a closing down dealership in Germany. This is basically how it came. This is how it came. This is the part number. It is KM6400 KH05, and you can see here, but it says KM6400 Kentmoor, France. So this is a genuine dipstick. It comes with the sticker and the barcode from the factory. So I'm going to put this aside, and we're going to take an accurate measurement with this tool. Now, what I want to let you know is this tool is used for different gearboxes, different Renault and Vauxhall Nissan Primastar gearboxes. You've got A, B levels, so ignore that. For Renault Trafic, Vauxhall Vivaro and Nissan Primastar, you're going to use the other side, which is letter C. So this is the minimum mark and this is the maximum mark. So let's see what we have now, where we are with 2.3 from dry fill. This gearbox was refurbished, completely disassembled and reassembled. So we've got about 2.3 liters in it from dry. So it's obviously going to vary if you have it basically just drained and refilled. It's going to retain some oil, so you're going to have a slightly different amount. And this is the correct procedure. You've got like 2 prongs here, and it inserts in this rib on the gearbox. You've got a seal on the cap here as well. So this is how this dipstick goes in at an angle, and then when you move it, you're gonna see we're sitting basically at the bottom of letter C. So with 2.3 liters, I believe we can add probably another easily maybe 100 to 200 milliliters of oil. Right, so I have about 2.5 liters altogether. I'm gonna insert again. I'm gonna take another measurement, and we're gonna check where we are on letter C. At 2.5 liters from the dry fill, we're probably at the perfect maximum mark. So I'm definitely not going to be adding any more oil. And now when I think about it, there was obviously a little bit of oil left in the previous 2 bottles before I opened the third one. I did spill a little bit. I mean, this is just like drips, so maybe we were talking about 2.45 liters if we have to be perfectly accurate when it comes to a complete dry fill from rebuilt gearbox. If you're going to be draining and adding fluid to already just a normal gearbox that hasn't been taken apart and fully drained and washed, so you're probably talking about 235, 2.4 liters. So you may have about 50 mil, maybe maximum to 100 mil in the gearbox. So if you're in basically need of changing your oil, you're probably going to be best to try and maybe make your own dipstick, which I'm going to put a diagram on the screen. It's not going to be as accurate as this, but it's going to be better than putting like 2.7, 3 liters in this and ruining the gearbox. So we are talking about 2.35 to maybe maximum 2.4 liters for a gearbox that has been previously filled, and you're just replacing oil. If you're doing this from scratch and you've rebuilt the gearbox, you're probably going to want to add about 2.5 liters, maybe 2.45, just so you don't exceed the maximum mark. So there you go. I've totally cleared the myth when it comes to the correct way of filling these gearboxes. And please do not fill and wait for this to start dripping, because you're gonna destroy the gearbox in no time. So I hope you've enjoyed this video and it makes it clear for everyone on the correct procedure for filling these PK6 and PF6 gearboxes. Now in my case, this is PK6. This is the 6-speed manual gearbox on the 1.9 DCI Renault Trafic, Vauxhall Vivaro and Nissan Primastar. Hopefully you enjoy this content, guys, and if you do like my content, hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and I'll see you in the next one.